In the early 1990s, Colombia was a nation of contrasts, rich in natural resources, poised between prosperity and danger, and holding one of the most prized treasures a country can possess: its gold reserves, stored deep within the fortified walls of the Banco de la República in Bogotá. Tons of gleaming gold bars, the weight of national currency and international confidence, rested behind layers of steel doors, electronic locks, and armed guards. Yet in February of 1994, a meticulously planned criminal operation managed something few believed possible: the near-undetected removal of 1.2 metric tons of gold from that high security vault in what would become one of the most audacious heists in modern history. To understand how that astonishing theft took place, we must first examine the vault itself. The Banco de la República vault was not the dusty old safe in a hidden alley. It was a modern facility designed with every available anti-theft technology of its time: seismic sensors to detect drilling alarms, tied directly to national law enforcement magnetic locks that reacted to irregular magnetic fields, reinforced concrete buffers hammered deep into bedrock, and a cadre of highly trained guards rotating shifts around the clock. Gold bars were cataloged numerically, each stamped with identifiers marking their weight, purity, and origin. When stacked together, a single pallet of these bars could weigh more than a ton. It was this combination of weight and high monetary value that made the heist about to unfold not just a crime of theft, but a crime of ingenuity. The criminal network behind the operation did not enter through the front door. They did not bypass a gate or bluff their way past guards. Instead, they exploited weaknesses. Most people never see the vulnerabilities that exist, not in technology, but in knowledge, human patterns, institutional routine, and complacency born of trust. 4 months prior to the incident, the group positioned itself quietly within Bogotá's urban landscape. They rented storage units, vehicles, and most critically, a business address near the central bank. To the naked eye, these were unremarkable decisions, but in truth, they were the groundwork of a patient and calculated operation. Close collaborators, including those with technical expertise in logistics and electrical systems, slowly integrated themselves into Colombian society, posing as traders, contractors, and businessmen. None bore criminal records that would raise suspicion. None stood out on security radars. And most importantly, none drew attention to themselves as they began to study the routines of the bank's daily operations. Investigators would later determine that the success of the heist lay in this period of low-profile observation, a phase that allowed the criminals to amass information that no alarm system could detect. They documented when the vault was most accessible, how deliveries were processed, how guards shifted, and how surveillance cameras rotated. They noticed that during certain lunch hours and shift changes, corridors within the bank would see brief windows of reduced monitoring. Using this intelligence, they devised a plan that was not about brute force, but precision. On the evening of the heist, the city of Bogotá was bustling as usual, traffic humming along its avenues, nightlife winding into motion, and the central bank itself preparing to close after another day of financial activity. Behind closed doors, however, the thieves were already beginning the quietest and perhaps most extraordinary chapter in the vault's history. Under the cover of darkness and diversionary timing, a group of operatives gained access not to the vault directly but to the bank's peripheral infrastructure, a network of maintenance tunnels beneath the building designed for electricians and plumbers to reach utilities without interrupting high-security spaces. These were not meant for casual access and were rarely frequented, but they offered a path of least resistance compared to trying to breach the vault's exterior. Once inside this maintenance system, the team began the painstaking process of excavation, moving soil, laying supports, installing lighting, and avoiding detection from motion sensors and pressure pads used above. What set this operation apart from conventional heists was the level of engineering precision involved. Structural supports were custom-built to prevent tunnel collapse. Lighting systems were installed to allow workers to operate safely underground for extended periods, and noise-dampening materials were used to muffle any sound that might escape into the bank above. At one point, investigators later hypothesized that the tunnel itself, which stretched more than 30 meters toward its target, represented months of work hidden beneath the foundation of one of Colombia's most fortified institutions, a feat that redefined what was possible when criminals applied patience alongside planning. When the tunnel finally reached the bank's inner vault floor, the group deployed techniques more commonly seen in industrial excavation than in criminal attacks. Precision cutting tools were used to breach the reinforced concrete base in a manner that minimized vibrations, preventing seismic alarms from triggering. Within hours, the operatives had cut an opening into the vault and began the process of transferring gold bars through the tunnel. Hundreds of them. Each bar weighed roughly 12.4 kilograms, meaning that an organized system of pulleys, carts, and human coordination was required to move them quietly, quickly, and without arousing suspicion. As the night wore on, pallets of gold were methodically transferred into waiting transport containers inside the tunnel. In total, around 1.2 metric tons of gold would be removed before the operation concluded. When the vault was opened the next morning, bank staff were stunned to find that a significant portion of the nation's gold reserves had disappeared without any obvious sign of forced entry. No blown vault door, no visible breach, no ordinary alarm triggered. Instead, they saw evidence of a disappearance so clean that it would take years for the true mechanics of the heist to be revealed. The immediate aftermath threw the central bank into crisis mode. Fear, anger, disbelief, and confusion rippled through financial institutions worldwide. How could such an impregnable facility be infiltrated so completely? The answer, as investigators would painstakingly uncover, was not in the failure of machines, but in the power of human strategy, patience, reconnaissance, and exploitation of routine. Yet even as forensic teams combed the scene for clues, they realized something unusual. Unlike many robberies where criminals leave fingerprints, hairs, or other biological traces in their haste, this gang had been nearly immaculate. Surfaces were wiped, gloves appeared to have been standard issue, and the removal of sweat, skin cells, or fibers suggested a level of discipline rarely associated with even the most professional theft operations. It was the first sign that this was not a ragtag burglary, but an operation executed with military-style efficiency and a level of foresight that surpassed most police expectations. In the days that followed the discovery of the disappearing gold, Colombian law enforcement and international security experts launched one of the most expansive investigations in modern history. Detectives, forensic scientists, intelligence agents, and financial analysts swarmed the central bank and surrounding infrastructure, attempting to piece together how the theft had occurred and who was responsible. Initial theories ranged from inside jobs involving bank officials to sophisticated external criminal syndicates with access to advanced technologies. What became clear early was that this was not a spontaneous crime of opportunity. It was a meticulously planned operation that required detailed knowledge of the bank, as internal systems, timings, and vulnerabilities. Investigators began reviewing months of security footage, interviewing every employee with vault access, and analyzing maintenance logs for anomalies. Yet despite exhaustive efforts, the amount of concrete evidence was limited. Tunnel entrances were sealed, tools were removed, and digital footprints were scarce. Even the transport of the gold bars presented challenges in the investigation. A critical breakthrough came when analysts discovered that only some of the stolen gold had resurfaced on the black market. Unlike simple thefts, where stolen goods quickly circulate, gold bars straight from a central bank vault were uniquely identifiable due to serial codes and stamped engravings. To avoid traceability, most of the stolen bullion had been melted down and re-refined, a process that erased markings and mixed the metal with other sources, making it nearly impossible to track. This act of destruction effectively broke the trail, transforming specific Colombian reserve bars into generic gold that could be sold globally without association to the crime. Finding the perpetrators became even more complicated because the tunnel itself, once discovered, did not lead to a simple address or single suspect. Instead, it traced back to a rented commercial property that offered no obvious clues beyond the fact that it had been used as the Operation S staging area. The business listed as the tenant had used legitimate paperwork, valid identification, and appeared on the surface to be a lawful enterprise. It was only in hindsight that investigators realized it was a carefully constructed front, a shell setup, months before the heist to give the tunnels a legitimate above-ground cover. Experts compared this tactic to historical criminal operations, where preparation and camouflage were more important than force. Colombia's own law enforcement officers admitted that they had never encountered a robbery with such deliberate, low-profile groundwork. As the investigation widened, authorities began looking beyond Colombia's borders. The stolen gold, once smelted and dispersed through refining networks in other countries, likely traveled through multiple intermediary hands. International agencies including Interpol and the U.S. Secret Service were brought in to assist with tracking illegal metal transfers and monitoring suspicious financial transactions. The problem was immense. Gold is a globally traded commodity, and once mixed with other sources, it is nearly indistinguishable from legitimate bars. Intercepting illicit gold requires cooperation from refineries, customs agencies, and financial institutions worldwide, a network that is porous and often minimally regulated in certain regions. Over time, a few low-level accomplices were arrested: couriers, low-tier tunnel workers, and front company associates. But the core leadership behind the operation was never publicly identified. High-value gold was never traced back to a source, and those who allegedly coordinated the mission remained in the shadows, shielded by layers of false identities and international mobility. The heist had managed not just to remove gold, but to erase evidence. Colombia's central bank faced harsh criticism in the aftermath, prompting a complete overhaul of vault security protocols and auditing systems. Seismic sensors were upgraded, biometric access controls were installed, and monitoring procedures were fundamentally The government also launched an internal review of staffing practices and information access policies. But many critics argued that the damage had already been done. The theft revealed vulnerabilities that no modern system could be entirely prepared for. In financial circles, the Banco de la República gold heist became a case study in security risk management, illustrating that even well-protected institutions can be penetrated when human systems and assumptions are exploited. Security consultants lectured around the world on the importance of cross-checking human access with technological safeguards, and how patterns of routine can be used against an organization by those willing to observe them closely. In the years since the heist, cultural fascination with the event grew, spawning books, documentaries, online forums, and speculative analysis. Treasure hunters and amateur sleuths searched for leads. Some believed that gold not yet recovered might lie hidden in private collections, waiting to resurface in unlikely places. Others speculated that core members of the operation had long ago transformed their stolen wealth into legitimate assets, spreading influence and capital far beyond their original reach. Despite decades of inquiry, the fundamental truth remains. Much of the stolen 1.2 metric tons of gold was never found, and the architects of the heist, to this day, have never stood trial in connection with the theft. What was once thought to be an impregnable vault became a testament to human ingenuity, not the ingenuity of engineers who built it, but the ingenuity of the criminals who found its weakness. As investigators look to the future of institutional security, the gold heist of 1994 persists as both a warning and a fascination. A story of meticulous planning, strategic patience, and a disappearance so complete that it continues to challenge our understanding of how crimes can be committed in an age of advanced surveillance. Because in the end, the greatest security systems in the world cannot guard against those who know how to manipulate patterns, exploit predictability, and operate in the shadows. And the gold, once worth millions, and valued at even more today, still remains a symbol of one of the most extraordinary crimes in modern history. Subscribe to Criminalverse, where every crime hides a story.